listening to Scoot Closer.
Welcome to Scoot Closer. I'm Ankita.
And I'm Shweta, and we're sisters. And Scoot Closer is our show that centers on women's health issues, the gaps that we see in care, and the emerging innovation in the space.
On today's episode, we will be deep diving into preterm labor, what it is, intervention steps for management, and innovation that a diagnostic company called Sera is spearheading in this space.
One thing we want to remind our listeners of is that the purpose of our show is that we want to highlight all of the new technologies, the research in the women's health space, but that doesn't mean that we are sponsored by the products or the companies or the people that we're bringing onto the show. It just means that we want to feature some really exciting things that are happening.
In fact, we are not sponsored by anyone. and we could probably use some sponsorship so that we could grow our listenership. And you may not believe it, but we have plans. We have really big plans. And are never...
This isn't just... I don't know what people think this is, but it will be more than that.
But both of us have full-time jobs. We have obviously very full lives. And so if you want to sponsor us, please do. We would love to, grow. We would love to focus on kind of growing our listenership, growing our social media presence. Those are areas that we're pretty not well versed in, and any sponsorship ideas out there for us, please reach out to us and let us know. We would just put that back in towards, figuring out how to grow Scoot
Getting
Closer.
The word out, getting the message out, like giving more of a platform to the people that come on the show. And if you know anyone that just understands Instagram or TikTok,
don't show them our millennial colors, Shweta.
I wouldn't tell everybody how long it takes us to do one Instagram post, but I'm going to, I'll do my mentalist trick, like hold a number in your head and then multiply it by 4. Yeah. And then you're probably still guessing it by half.
Dude, legitimately, like it is actually embarrassing when I think about how long it takes me to make like a reel, and then I inevitably mess something up.
Yeah.
And then
Was there something you posted last time?
Yes. I inevitably mess it up.
You posted something weird, and I immediately called you, and I was trying to be nice, and I was like, this was great. I have like one piece of feedback if you think you can. And you immediately were like, because you were like, no, I have to take it down. I have to redo it.
Yeah, you think I can edit something? You think I know how to edit a damn thing?
No, it's also that before I even told you what the feedback was, you knew exactly what I was talking about. And I don't remember it anymore. It was like some weird text placement or wording.
Yeah.
But you guys, it's not
so
good over.
Bad.
We're not, we love doing this, but we also really, we need experts, and we know you're listening. So come help us, come join us, go tell people to sponsor us, whatever it is. Yeah. Let's grow together. Let's learn together. We're here to learn not only about women's health, but also Instagram reels.
Let's learn Instagram together.
Okay.
Oh man. Okay.
Should we get into it?
Yeah. Let's circle back to our topic. We are going to talk about preterm labor today. Preterm labor is defined as having regular contractions and cervical changes that start before 37 weeks of pregnancy. So as a reminder, pregnancy is 40 weeks, and then anything before, any babies or any labor that you go into before the 37-week mark is considered as preterm. Key factors for preterm birth are if you have had a prior preterm birth before. So that's really people that are at risk. If you've had one, there's higher risk to have another. People with short cervical lengths going into usually the second trimester, that is considered a risk factor. And then if you're having twins or triplets or something like that, multiple pregnancies or multiple gestations, I think they're called, as well as a short interval between pregnancies. So if you are having Irish twins, if you're having another pregnancy within 18 months of your previous pregnancy, you are also at higher risk for preterm birth in the future. Then obviously, the general types of risks are like tobacco use, drug use, cervical and uterine anomalies that could exist in specific people. I mean, those are all pretty individualized, but broadly it's prior preterm labor, short cervix lengths, multiple gestations, and short intervals.
I think this has been a common theme in every episode that we look at, which is no matter the issue, there's always additional disparities based on social determinants of health. So that could be your socioeconomic status, it could be your racial status, and we found in our research that the same. Yeah, right, exactly. It goes back to what we talked about with Dr. Williams, which is if people
maternal
don't have access, right. If you live in a maternal desert, if you're not getting the care that you need, then you might not be identified as high risk. You might not get the appropriate care for being high risk. You might experience preterm labor. We know that people in those care deserts experience higher rates of preterm labor because of the lack of care. So in general, overall in the US, the preterm birth rate, I was really surprised by this. It's 10.4% of live births in the US are preterm births. And that's 1 in 10 people.
1 in 10 feels like it's a pretty big number. But, we do have to account, like, one of the things that we've learned is preeclampsia is typically caught at 36 weeks. And it's usually caught during that like 34, 36 week checkup that you tend to have with your doctor. And they will tell you, like, you need to go to the hospital. You'll go, like, if you have preeclampsia, they will tell you need to go to the hospital right now. You need to go deliver. And so there's a lot of people that kind of deliver in that 30, like, it'd be interesting to break this down further, but there's a lot of people that probably deliver between that 34 to 36 week time frame that are dealing with, like preeclampsia or other sort of markers for having to induce birth earlier because they're high risk. And so maybe that number is, coming from that where yes, like 34 and 36 weeks are not ideal weeks to deliver your baby. Obviously, you want to bake your baby as long as possible.
Yeah.
But the outcomes for babies in those time frames are still very favorable.
Yeah. It would be interesting to maybe like see a distribution curve of when we say 10.4%, how many of those are happening much earlier
within like the 30s versus within the 20s. Yeah,
because those outcomes are so different. Every day counts. But, we looked at what was the breakdown for the preterm birth rates across different groups. And we learned that, unsurprisingly, for Black mothers or Black birthing parents, that they experience the highest rate of preterm birth in the US at almost 15%. The next tier would be Hispanic birthing parents at a rate of 10%, so on par with the national average. And then both white and Asian birthing parents at 9.4 or 9.0%. So there's some differences and disparities here, but it's always just good to be armed with the data. I think just when we think about how equitable is our care access, how equitable is the research, the solutions out there, and how do we also advocate for each other and seek solutions that are beneficial for everyone and not just our groups, I think it's just good to know these numbers. Obviously, we know then after the preterm birth happens, we were curious, what does that actually mean for NICU rates? Because not only are there adverse outcomes for the birthing parent, there are adverse outcomes for babies. And we talked about it in our last episode, but every day counts. And so the longer you can bake that baby, even, each day at a time, you can get better outcomes, even if they end up being preterm, if you can get them to 36 instead of 30.
So between my two kiddos, one was born a week later than the other. And
one baked a week longer.
One baked a week longer, correct.
Yeah.
And the one that did not bake as long, and technically they were preterm by like 1 day, and everything was fine. But, they were preterm by 1 day, and they had, if you remember, so many digestive issues.
So
like
many.
we used to have to hold them upright after feeding for 20 minutes. And I know so many parents go through this, but so many digestive issues.
Couldn't be burping,
Constantly
the acid
gurgling, so much acid
wheezing.
reflux. Yeah. And we have all those
noisy,
videos.
high maintenance baby.
Yeah. And I remember we used to say that they were just wheezing all the time. And then the one that was born that baked for longer, like no digestive issues.
No problems.
And 1 week made such a huge difference. When they say that a day, a week, like all of that matters with these babies that are developing so fast in the womb, it just makes such a big difference to their outcomes when they go home, even with very, very little things. And I think I've seen it kind of live, and obviously it's science. I get it. Yeah. I've seen it in action.
But it's amazing.
Yeah, but it's science.
You can still be amazed by it. It's science. I think the reason we are like hammering these data points so much is because every day counts, and the better we get at preempting or providing preventative care or finding diagnostic solutions that tell us what to expect, the more likely we are to have positive outcomes. And so, like we said, the overall preterm birth rate in the US is 10.4%. We've also seen NICU admissions on the rise. So in 2023, they rose up to 9.8%. Back in 2016, that was about a percentage lower at 8.7%. So even though that's a percentage rise, that's already too much.
It's compounding. Because in the last episode, we talked about maternal care access and how it's getting worse and hospitals are shutting down, and therefore your access to care is getting farther away, which means you have less intervention, more travel time, more missed appointments, where you are dealing with worse outcomes now. I wonder if we're going to see these numbers rise even more. We totally are.
Yeah, I think with the cuts to Medicaid and everything else, we know that the outcomes are getting tougher. Doesn't mean like we have to doom spiral. It just means we got to be so clear-eyed about how everything happening around us is going to start to affect these rates. The percentage I just shared is from 2023. So we don't even have the latest data, but we know that it's going to shift.
And I think going back to what Shweta was saying about doom spiraling, like we recognize that on this podcast, we talk about extreme things that are happening, and that far and wide, most pregnancies are normal, low-risk pregnancies. And so we totally understand that, and we are not trying to doom spiral here together and have our listeners do the same thing. We are just kind of making sure that you're aware of the trends, just so that you're armed with more information, and you can make better decisions when it comes to your own personal care, when it comes to community issues, all of those things.
Yeah. Do you want to know a cute NICU fact? I don't know if I've told you this one before, so we can balance out the doom spiraling. Did you know that you can volunteer to be a NICU baby holder and snuggler?
Oh my God.
It's one of the toughest volunteer jobs to get. Obviously, it's like you go through an extreme vetting process, as you should. I know about this because one of my friends, I think her aunt got approved to be one a while ago. Because, I think that's a part of co-regulation. And let's say the parents are unavailable, they can't be there 24/7, or maybe they themselves are recovering from something and there are only so many nurses to each baby. So they just need people sometimes to help co-regulate those babies and hold them.
Do you know what that would do for my own personal regulation?
Exactly. Oh my God. I see this as a very mutually beneficial. I actually often talk about how, like, when people ask me about COVID, I talk a lot about how your older kiddo is like my emotional support baby, because I would hold them a lot to let them sleep. And I was like, oh, like, just like a heavy weight on my chest, like a squeaky, like tooting weighted blanket.
Oh my God. Just
it's so nice.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. That would do wonders for my own regulation and hopefully for the baby too. And wow.
Let's prioritize it. Don't make this about yourself.
Well, I just want to hold a baby.
I hope that baby gets something out of it, but I know I will get a lot out of it. props to anybody working in the NICU wards. Thank you for what you do. Please accept this as my formal application to be a NICU volunteer. I will do it. I volunteer as tribute. Okay. Should we get back into it for a third time? We've talked about the preterm rates, what it means, and what it means for babies a little bit. But let's say you get identified as somebody who might be at risk for preterm labor. Does the treatment change? Like, what happens after that to somebody that's pregnant?
So the intervention steps for if you've been identified as somebody who has preterm labor are they start doing cervical length testing for you around the 16 to 18 week mark, depending on, when you were identified. And essentially what that is it's a transvaginal ultrasound. So you're in stirrups and they're checking to see the cervical length. The shorter your cervical length, the more at risk you are. So what they typically do is they start progesterone therapy, low dose aspirin, and then in really high risk cases or in sort of progression cases, they do cerclages as well. And which
is a very cute French word, I assume. Yeah.
It
means you get like a purse and you get to go home. Right?
It's a cerclage, yeah. It's a cerclage.
Here's your cerclage.
If by purse you mean stitches in your cervix to make the cervical shortening stop, then yeah, that's the cute little thing that you get.
Less.
But it's tried and true, and it works, and it keeps the baby in longer, baking, which is what we're looking for.
You're right.
But, if you've been identified as somebody who has preterm labor, those are the intervention steps that you tend to follow.
Got it. One thing that was like shocking to me is that those indicators leave still a huge gap of people that actually end up being affected by preterm labor. So what I mean by that is 50% of the people that actually end up delivering preterm had none of the evident risk factors beforehand. So that's a huge gap of us not being able to know if somebody has a propensity for preterm labor. And then we don't get to start them on the track of cervical length testing, progesterone therapy, and low-dose aspirin. We don't get to allow them the opportunity to bake their babies longer and give themselves and their babies the best chance of healthy labor and delivery and long-term survival. And we're just so excited for you all to hear about our conversation with Zhenya Lindgardt of Sera. And they developed a test called the preterm test, which is a blood test, like a blood prick. And you can order it through your doctor when you are in this really early window of pregnancy between 18 to 20 weeks. And during that time period, if you run the test, it can help predict your individual risk of delivering early. So if you get a positive result from that test, then you can start to do those preventative care measures that Ankita mentioned and hopefully give yourself better chances of going as close as you can to full term as possible.
One of the things that I want to highlight about preterm test that really, really stood out to me was that it has a 75% test sensitivity. And basically what this means is, let's imagine you have 100 women and you have magical foresight, mentalist abilities, as Shweta has, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. If you were to check my test sensitivity, you don't even want to know. Like, hold a number in your head and then multiply that by 5.
And you still won't be anywhere close to what we need to be at. Anyway,
no, you're right. You're probably right. Okay.
What this means is that, like, we have 100 women in the room and we have magical foresight and we know that all 100 of them are going to go into preterm labor. Now I give them a preterm test, and of the 100 women that I know for sure are going to go into preterm labor, we are going to identify correctly that 75 of them are going to go into labor. Now let's compare that with our traditional tools of cervical length testing. If we were to, on those 100 women, do cervical length testing, we would identify 6 women out of 100 that would go into preterm labor. If we were to look at prior birth history, we would identify 11 women out of the 100. But this test, one that I don't have to get in stirrups for, one that I don't have to do anything invasive or crazy for, it is a blood test. This is what we've been like screaming about in all of our episodes, is like, give us the non-invasive, accurate testing. And so I think to me, this is really exciting. This type of innovation feels really impactful for women's health and for pregnancy journeys.
Like when hipsters get to be like, we knew that band before they were cool. I mean, Sera is already a big deal, but like I feel so excited because I really feel like this is the definition of being at the forefront of these types of solutions for our health. We're just really excited to nerd out with Zhenya. We're going to dive into the research and science behind how they innovated the preterm test. So stay tuned for our interview with their CEO, Zhenya Lindgardt, and learn so much more with us about how we got to this exciting solution. Welcome, Zhenya Lindgardt. Zhenya is the president and CEO of Sera Prognostics, a company that is pioneering the biomarker-based tools to improve maternal and neonatal outcomes through earlier detection of preterm birth risk. Before Sera, Zhenya advised healthcare and life science companies on women's health, rare diseases, and vaccine innovation. She also leads the Commons Project Foundation, which empowers patients to share and control their health data for better and more equitable care. Zhenya has been at the forefront of modernizing healthcare and making data-driven preventative care more accessible. We could not be more excited for this interview. Ankita and I have been anticipating it for weeks, months. Thank you so much for joining us today, Zhenya. We're really excited to dig in.
Shweta, Ankita, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm so looking forward to this conversation.
We'd love for you to share your background and your role at Sera for our listeners.
Well, as a mom of 3 girls, I have a particular connection to the women's health issues in this country and globally. I spent a lot of time on the continent of Africa, Asia, Europe, Latin America. The issues are equally dire, I think, across the board in driving innovation to improve women's health. Frankly, I was always looking for that place where I could contribute to improve people's lives on a big scale. And when maybe 5 years ago, Sera Prognostics found me. My predecessor, Dr. Greg Critchfield, invited me to join Sera board. I immediately got hooked on the mission on improving pregnancy outcomes and making moms and babies healthier through this life-changing episode in every mother's life. And coming from a combination of life sciences and technology, I thought I have a unique perspective because every expectant mom in today's day and age is a digital native. We find most of our information on our devices. We are practically bionic humans, especially the multitasking moms. So
I'm ready to chip my kid. When can
Don't
I
say
chip my
that.
kid? I'm ready. I need to know where they are at all times.
There are air tags for that.
Well, it's a lot easier because she will demand a phone when she is 6.
That's
Sorry.
fair. That's fair.
So you will probably know where she is at all times. But connecting technology and life sciences innovations and making them more accessible to every expectant mom is what I am after and what Sera Prognostics is working on. So that's how I ended up at Sera Prognostics.
One of the things that we'd love for you to talk about is what is the preterm test that Sera Prognostics has developed, and also why do we think that preterm labor is such an urgent problem to solve?
It's not apparent or well publicized that preterm birth is one of the leading causes of death for babies in this country. And today, a newborn has a much higher chance of ending up in the NICU than 10 years ago. So unfortunately, the maternal mortality, neonatal mortality, chances of ending up in the NICU post-birth, the trends are going in the wrong direction. This is in the United States where the health spending and budget is probably the highest across the world. And we are seeing the outcomes very similar to developing nations. I would call it a preterm epidemic that has been intractable for decades. From that perspective, it is a huge potential impact on the healthcare of our society if we address the issues of preterm birth. Why? Not only the babies that are born prematurely have significant health complications, some of them, especially for earliest born who are born before 28 weeks, have lifelong implications. And of course, it has huge implications on the healthcare system. For example, almost half of the births in the United States are funded by Medicaid, and you've all have heard about the significant cuts to the Medicaid budgets. And the childbirth related expenses account for 27% of all of the hospital bills that Medicaid pays. So it is a huge burden on our healthcare budgets. For us as a society, it's critical to address the root causes of preterm birth and do what we can to reduce not only the occurrences of preterm birth, but ameliorate the implications on health of preterm birth. It's estimated to cost the United States $25 billion plus per year, the cost of prematurity. And the cost of birth of a premature baby is 10 times that of a full-term baby. And of course, the lifelong health issues of prematurity that result in the birth before 37 weeks of gestation. Back to the first question you asked, which is what is it that Sera Prognostics developed? Preterm test is a blood test that gets done between weeks 18 and 20 of gestation, which is in the middle part of the second trimester. And it measures two proteins that circulate in the pregnant woman's blood. It's very non-invasive. It can be a little finger prick. It can be done as part of the blood draw from the vein. We try to make it as easy as possible for the physicians and for the mom to get the result. We measure two proteins. If you want to get into the details, they're called IBP4 and SHBG, but basically one measures level of inflammation and level of nutrient delivery through the placenta, or one of the things that they could indicate. And the other one, sex hormones and how they influence the development of the fetus. Both have been studied to contribute to understanding the strength of placental function. Placenta being the organ that gets developed for this particular pregnancy and can perform differently, better or worse, from pregnancy to pregnancy. So understanding how well that organ is functioning is very important for physicians to understand based on the results that our tests can deliver on whether or not there is a higher risk for spontaneous preterm birth. We've published more than 10 clinical trial results in leading journals in obstetrics and gynecology that show that use of safe and common interventions like very low dose aspirin or vaginal progesterone daily and weekly conversations with the OBGYN nurses to discuss how is the pregnancy progressing, monitor for symptoms, have great improvement in clinical outcomes. We just finished a pivotal trial with more than 5,000 women where we randomized women in the active and the control arm and screened everybody for higher or lower risk for preterm birth. And we specifically focused on so-called low-risk pregnancies. We took lower risk women, identified with preterm test who is at higher risk for spontaneous preterm birth, and the physicians applied this simple intervention protocol. And we saw a 20% reduction in NICU admissions. We saw 8% reduction of the length of stay in the NICU for the babies that have been screened and then treated with the intervention bundle. So all in all, this is a second study that showed such great outcomes. We're excited about bringing this innovative test into clinical practice because it helps babies not end up in the NICU, for moms to extend the gestation of their baby, and for the baby to be born healthier and get out of the hospital sooner.
Those are incredible outcomes.
And the margins for health when you're dealing with a newborn feels so thin. And so hearing these percentages and the reductions in time in the hospital or the improvements in health outcomes, I'm sure people who are parents or prospective parents can really feel what a difference that can make.
While the percentages sound dry, I'll share in of one story of my three girls. The first one was born borderline premature, and she was a complete surprise. I was still waiting for 3 more weeks of pregnancy, but she arrived this tiny, tiny, shriveled, looked like an old person without any fat, baby fat cheeks or neck anywhere. It was like wrinkles and constantly starving. So To me, even though it was not a severe case, it was a stark difference with her younger sister, who was born almost double the size, exactly on 40 weeks when she was supposed to arrive. This pink baby with big cheeks, slept a lot better, ate a lot better. I just saw such a stark difference that just 3 weeks made. So this was not even a health outcome. This was just a lifestyle outcome. I was a completely different mom with the full-term baby than with the borderline preterm.
I feel like I had a very similar experience with my kiddos as well. And I could just tell their digestion was so different. Just an extra week of baking had a big difference for both of them.
Every single day truly counts, and it's totally worth for every mom who is listening to think about how to make sure that the baby stays in as long as possible, as uncomfortable as it may feel in the end stage of pregnancy, but it's all worth it to have them eat better and sleep better and be healthier.
I want to rewind a little bit because you talked earlier about the original markers that doctors use to detect risk of preterm labor, and that your test has identified protein markers for that risk in patients. We'd love to nerd out with you and learn, what was that journey like to discover that these proteins would be the biomarkers? You know, how did it go from research to product development there? I want people to understand that this is a new and really incredible discovery that, you know, we're not seeing other people make in the market.
It's been a very long journey. Sera is a young company. We've been public for 4 years, but we've been around for 17. The first decade was partnering with over 13 universities who have started deploying proteomics and observing how protein expression in the mom's blood happens over the course of the pregnancy. We undertook a large study in partnership with them and mapped over 250 proteins and how they fluctuate throughout the pregnancy. As part of that work, we spotted that 2 particular proteins identify particular abnormalities in the course of the pregnancy, potentially increase in inflammation or reduced strength of delivery of nutrients to the fetus, etc., etc. So it was a long journey in partnership with a lot of academics that really culminated in zeroing in on these 2 proteins that I discussed, and then structuring a large study where we again recruited over 5,000 women and started testing the hypotheses of how these 2 proteins fluctuate throughout the pregnancy in order for us to develop a reliable predictor, which is a ratio of these 2 proteins to each other. One has a higher level than normal in preterm birth moms, and one has a lower than normal in preterm moms. And we developed a predictive algorithm that would read the biomarker results from a specimen of pregnant blood and be able to forecast how many times the average risk of preterm birth is this mom likely going to experience. Then the really hard work started. We started doing additional work to understand if the physicians can pick up that this is a pregnancy with a higher risk for spontaneous preterm birth. What can they do about it? We partnered with Society for Maternal Fetal Medicine specialists. These are the specialists dealing with high-risk pregnancies, and asked them what they recommend once the physicians know that this is a woman that might give birth prematurely. And that's how the combination of baby aspirin and vaginal progesterone and a weekly nurse call came about. And then we proceeded to run 3 trials. So that's the history of how the test came about. But now it's available to all. It's in the market. It can be ordered by physicians. It can be ordered by moms on the website. And we are excited to share these results with everyone.
We saw that cervical length screenings are still extremely commonly used. That's the standard right now. Can you tell us what the sensitivity of preterm looks like versus the cervical length testing?
It's a great question. The sensitivity of about 6 to 8% has been given in literature for cervical length screening. We have sensitivity of 75%. So you can imagine it's orders of magnitude more effective. Actually, it's such a stark difference. Think about the labor involved in continuous transvaginal ultrasound screening, because it needs to happen every couple of weeks throughout the pregnancy, versus one blood test that is quick and easy, a couple of drops of blood. It really helps to have innovative technologies like proteomics inform the pregnancy. It's much more cost effective and much more efficient at identifying because it looks at your blood and what's happening with you right now versus imperfect imaging instruments.
It's so mind-blowing. Ankit and I both work in tech. When we hear this is a more accurate, more cost-efficient, more adaptable test, and then we're still faced with the adoption issue. I think as consumers and as patients, it's hard to hear how much inertia there is in the system for these things.
It is, and we can do something about it. Us moms or expectant moms or planning to be pregnant moms, by seeking information, learning about it. That's why I think what you're doing is so important, because it starts with education. Forearmed, forewarned, we can learn more about how our bodies are doing in this pregnancy so that we can make better decisions and have healthier babies.
I think it speaks a lot that your company, you could have stopped at the detection test and thrown that over the fence into the market. But continuing on with the research of what would an effective treatment bundle look like, how do you actually make that a part of the program when you see your results, says a lot just about the holistic approach that you all have taken.
We did go above and beyond the diagnostic companies would typically be accounted for doing, but pregnancy is a unique space. So we wanted to do our part to spur the continuous innovation, and we're now supporting a lot of investigator-initiated studies to look for even more effective intervention than what we were able to identify and study.
You mentioned that you've gone beyond just being diagnostic and you've taken a look at, okay, what does a treatment bundle look like? We know that when it comes to medical devices, that there's a lot of institutional obstacles along the way to get new things adopted. We've talked about speculums in previous episodes and how innovation in the space is kind of dead-ended most of the time. And, what are some of the things that Sera is doing to help with clinical adoption on a larger scale?
It's the partnership with physicians is absolutely critical. We are a diagnostic company. We do not provide care. So it's very important that we support clinicians and academics in delivering good science. We're fortunate to have worked very closely with leading experts in maternal fetal medicine who have developed those clinical interventions with their own communities that we've put into our own studies. We see our critical role is to catalyze innovative research. As you know, recently the NIH funding has been reduced dramatically, especially to fund clinical research as well. So from our perspective, industry plays a critical role to help support the innovative research. That's step number one, partnering with the researchers, innovators in the academic community and the clinicians to help develop the innovations. I think second is we expanded our partnership to companies like Everyday Health, which own assets like Baby Center, babybump.com that reach 93% of pregnant moms in any given year. I was talking about this is a digitally native generation of moms who are pregnant now and they get their information online. So for us to partner with these news and data sources that moms turn to is really important to bring some of the innovative information to them. But of course, it's clinical education that is the most important. So we spend a lot of time and effort on supporting research and publications because peer-reviewed research articles in leading journals is what physicians go to in shaping how they deliver care.
It sounds like reaching the physicians is the best way to scale for Sera and for the preterm tests. What would you say to people who are prospective customers or prospective patients that would want to use the preterm test, and how would they go about doing that?
Well, first of all, I want to encourage everyone who is pregnant to seek more information, and our test is very accessible. If you go online, preterm.com, pretrm.com or sera.com and navigate towards learn more about the test and order the test, it can be done online with a few clicks. We have a ton of education resources on YouTube, in video format, in text format, in Q&A format to understand the pregnancy risks because again, 1 out of 10 is not rare. 10% chance is pretty high chance actually for all of us to be aware of any condition. So learning more online, ordering online. Of course, we have a discussion guide for a pregnant mom with her physician about the test. and an opportunity to leave your physician's information so that we can follow up with the physician and tell the physician about the test. We wanted to make the test accessible via mail order. It's a finger prick test. You can send it back to our lab and we'll have results to you and your physician in 3 to 5 days. So please reach out to us if you want to learn more.
I love that how accessible it is, and hopefully this becomes one of the standard cares of procedure that we have going forward. Similarly, how a NIPT test is offered, maybe a preterm test can also be offered at the right time of gestation.
For NIPT testing, it took over a decade. So I hope we can move faster. Actually, what would be interesting to highlight for you and all of the listeners is in April of this year, just a couple of months ago, American College for Obstetrics and Gynecology issued a pretty pivotal change in their guidelines of how pregnancy care protocol should change. For decades, it's been the same for every pregnant mom. But in this April bulletin that ACOG issued, they stated that the care protocol needs to be tailored to the risk level of the pregnancy. And there needs to be much more variety in what needs to be done in this pregnancy care based on that individual mom's condition or propensity to develop risky conditions in pregnancy. That was just so wonderful to see. It made my year, to be completely honest, because having had 3 kids, I had exact same pregnancy care for all 3. And by the 3rd one, frankly, I got so jaded. I missed most of my appointments because I had two toddlers on my hands and a full-time job. So it was frankly hard. I know that for many expectant mothers, it's exactly like that. For example, Black women experience 50% higher rates of preterm birth than their non-Hispanic counterparts because of potentially inaccessibility of a hospital-grade obstetric care in their areas, or just being too busy. From that perspective, it's critical for us to spread the word about what innovations exist and how to stay educated and stay informed.
The more and more we talk to folks, this concept of having your medicine be tailored to you and be specific to your needs, it keeps coming up as a novel concept. And it's not a novel concept in any other aspects of our lives. Why is it our TikTok algorithms are exactly what we need at any given time? And all of my internet websites, no matter where I go, it has all my cookies and it knows exactly what I'm thinking. So why is my care not catered more to what's happening with me? We've found that to be a theme, and it's frustrating because it should not be a novel concept. Your body is unique, and so are the needs, and so it's not going to necessarily respond in the same exact way that somebody else did for a pregnancy. And it's important to kind of get your specific needs, I guess. So yeah,
that's exactly
novel concept.
Novel, not so novel. I did want to say that even if a mom knows that she could be at risk for spontaneous preterm birth, there's huge opportunity for her to make decisions daily differently. I remember I was agonizing with the first pregnancy. Do I take this cup of coffee? Is this, is the second one really a disaster or not? It's really hard to make those decisions as a first-time expectant mother. And you won't call your doctor for every one of them. However, if you know and you have a blood test to show that based on your biology and how this pregnancy is going, it allows us to make more careful decisions. So being empowered with that knowledge allows you as an individual to care about yourself better and learn more about what you can do to achieve better outcomes for you and the baby. Precision medicine and precision diagnostics and public health, they go together when it comes to pregnancy and 3.6 million births that happen in this country every year. Yeah. We're impacting literally millions of people.
Well, Zhenya, thank you so much for joining us. This has been an amazing conversation. We've loved talking about everything from the science to the clinical adoption of the preterm test. We're just really excited that this innovation is now just so much more widely available, and we encourage folks to get educated on it and utilize it if it makes sense for their lifestyle.
Wonderful. A huge thank you.